the political leadership decided, on foot of extraordinary pressure from Washington and the West, that something had to be done. And I think the army, as the one functioning institution, realised it was going to be down to them to try to rescue the country. They had public opinion very strongly behind them this time, and that has been a decisive factor. People here saw the Taliban for themselves, carrying out floggings, beheadings, blowing up girls' schools, coming within about 60 miles of where we're standing now. And Pakistanis woke up to the fact that this wasn't just something that was happening in Afghanistan. They got a taste of the Taliban for themselves. They didn't like it. They want them stopped.
Well, you seem to like living in cities under siege. This one is very strange, isn't it? Because on one hand it looks a bit like a sort of government city, a bureaucratic city, anywhere in the West, quite frankly, and it's also really rather empty, and yet you have all these roadblocks everywhere. What's it like living here?
It's quite a deceptive sort of city. Parts of Islamabad look frankly like Wisteria Lane. But on the other hand, somebody said to me today, how do you feel about moving here? I said, well, it's good so far. And he said, yeah, Islamabad is great as long as you stay alive. I mean, there is a real sense here of this city fortifying itself for battle, of huge protections going up around the UN, around hotels. People are now starting to have the kind of mentality that I've seen for so many years in the Middle East.
Ola, thanks so much for your insights and thanks a lot for your reports. Ola going there. Barack Obama is sending thousands of extra troops to Afghanistan. This is now also his war. Britain has spent 3 years fighting the Taliban in the south of the country in increasingly fierce combat. The result of all this, according to the senior British commander in the region, stalemate. Most of the damage against foreign troops is now being inflicted by IEDs, first used in Iraq to devastating effect, and now the Taliban's weapon of choice. Ian Pannell reports from Afghanistan, where he's had rare access to one of the Taliban's bomb factories.
Our cameraman was taken to a secret house not far from Kabul. We weren't allowed to film the location or the faces of anyone here, because this is where the Taliban make bombs. These ingredients have killed and wounded thousands. Cowardly and desperate tactics, according to many here. But the Taliban say it's a legitimate weapon. Yet more and more civilians are dying every day, and most are killed by the insurgents.
This is not true. We detonate our bombs by remote control. They are the ones who kill people. You know this. Nobody has said the Taliban kills civilians here with bombs or anything else.
We can't show you their faces, but these men are Pakistanis, captured in Afghanistan, fighting with the Taliban. Weapons and volunteers pour into the country from across the border to support what they call a holy war against the West. The hunt is on for the insurgents and their weapons. An anti-terrorism operation sets up a series of roadside blocks. At the moment, we're standing on the border between Kabul and Logar province. As you can see, the police are busy stopping vehicles and searching people. And the whole point is to try and stop men and munitions belonging to the insurgents from moving into the capital. And this area is absolutely vital, because this is the place where the Taliban moved in just 12 months ago. But the Taliban know not to come here. They have an advanced network of informants, and word of security operations usually spreads quickly. The Taliban are highly organised. They even have their own courts. A man comes for help with a land dispute. He asks the Taliban judge to intervene. In some cases, the justice they offer can be brutal. More often, it's welcomed as an honest alternative.
The difference between the Taliban and the government is that there is corruption in the government. The Taliban decide based on Quran. Taliban decide on the cases quickly, but the government is always slow. The Taliban are good people.
The Taliban know this is as much a battle for public support as it is a military one, and they've again become a force to be reckoned with.
There are more people trying to shoot and trying to blow up soldiers and indeed civilians and Afghan national security forces than there were this time last year. We do need to show in every area progress in the relatively near future.
Western strategy is to first weaken the Taliban on the battlefield. Thousands of extra troops are in place, and a major offensive is already underway. The second part of the plan is to sit down and talk to some of the Taliban. But a man who knows the insurgents well says they're wary.
This is some kind of contradiction, and to want peace and sending more troops to Afghanistan. I think until these obstacles remaining in the way, that's not possible to go to the table to talk with the Taliban, and because of mistrust between two sides.
There'll be more fighting and more deaths this summer in an effort to turn the tide against the insurgents. This is the most important year for Afghanistan since the Taliban were overthrown 8 years ago. Ian Pannell, BBC News, Kabul.
International troops need to make a fundamental shift in attitude to reduce civilian casualties. That's according to America's top military commander in Afghanistan. General Stanley McChrystal says the troops will be told to stop firing at insurgents if civilians are present, unless, he says, the soldiers' lives are under direct threat. Our correspondent Damon Grammaticus caught up with the governor of Uruzgan province in southern Afghanistan, which is seen as crucial to winning the war by both sides.
He's just taken charge of the war in Afghanistan.
Stan McChrystal, it's a pleasure to meet you.
And General Stanley McChrystal is already preaching a radical shift, more focus on the needs of Afghans, making their security the top priority.
We're going to win. And when we talk about winning, winning means giving the Afghan people a chance to make a choice, choose what they want their future to be.
NATO and its allies, like the local governor, are in danger of losing the war here. Too many civilians have died, and the government is seen as corrupt, inefficient, unable to protect people. We joined the governor in his armoured car. Here in Uruzgan province, a former Taliban stronghold, his life is constantly under threat.
Under a flak jacket. Sometimes.
From the roof of his office, you can see the extent of the territory under his control.
We control all of this area up to that mountain, you see.
It's not much, but 2 years ago even this building was regularly attacked.
And the people of Uruzgan working with us very closely, and day by day our security gets progressing.
General McChrystal has to get an unwieldy coalition of NATO forces from over 40 nations to rethink their tactics. But flying over the vast, rugged expanses of southern Afghanistan, it seems an enormous task. 8 years on, the Taliban still control swathes of territory here. The problem for NATO is time is running out. A senior American officer today told me there's probably just 12 months to improve the situation in Afghanistan, or support in the West for this war may ebb away. And General McChrystal made clear just before he flew out that that will mean a major change in the military approach. You're busy reshaping the policy here, but what needs to change for this war to be won?
Well, I think that much of it's already changing. We need to do a comprehensive counterinsurgency campaign. And what that means is, as President Obama and the NATO leadership have done, is devote enough resources. Within the effort, though, we need to focus on the Afghan people. We need to focus on protecting them. We need to focus on helping them have governance and development. We need to make this war about protecting them from violence and coercion from the insurgency. And I think as we inculcate that into the entire force, we'll be very successful.
So America's new man in Afghanistan knows the situation is serious, and what happens this year could determine whether the war is won or lost. Damien Grammaticus, BBC News, Uruzgan in southern Afghanistan.
That's all from here in Islamabad, Pakistan. We'll be back with Katty Kay in Washington.
All this week, Matt Fry has been in Islamabad presenting our special coverage of the security situation in Afghanistan and Pakistan. We've been bringing you reports from the front lines of the war against the Taliban in Afghanistan and the efforts to root out extremist elements in Pakistan. Tonight, Matt wraps up our special coverage with a closer look at the daily lives of people in the region.